anyone who needs to figure out how to develop business and how to better control their financial role within the organization just has to find a way to develop their own business.
Welcome to Thought Talk, Positivity in Motion. Hosted by best-selling author, speaker, and coach C. Ray Collins.
Communication is still a very important key, and making it positive is something that we don't do enough of.
C. Ray visits with members of our communities and leaders of local businesses on how they share a positive message during difficult and good times. And now, here's C. Ray.
Good morning. Welcome to Thought Talk, where everything is positive. Before I introduce my guest today, I just want to remind everybody that my new book is out. You can find it on almost any online outlet, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can pick it up off of my webpage, craycollins.com. So y'all take a look at it. Y'all enjoy the book. I have a special guest and friend with me today. She's an attorney. She's also an author. She's a rancher. She's a speaker. And she's from Frogville, Oklahoma. Sharla Frost. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it very much.
Good morning, Claude.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Good. I'm glad that you're here. So you're a litigation attorney, and you've been doing it for 20 years or so. So won't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do now and what you used to do and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, like you told them, I grew up in Frogville, Oklahoma, which is a little ranching community in the southeast corner of Oklahoma. I tell people we were 13 miles from a loaf of bread growing up because we were way out in the country. I went to college at Southeastern, best known for Reba McEntire and Dennis Rodman. Then I went to law school at Baylor. After that, I started my legal practice in Houston, and for the next 30-something years. I appreciate that you thought I was young enough for it to be 20, but yeah, it's a little over 30. I did trial work. I represented corporate defendants that got sued in repetitive litigation primarily, so asbestos or silica, things of that nature. I threw myself between juries and my clients' money. If you could potentially hurt a lot of people with something, those were the kinds of cases that I was involved in. I also did some pharmaceutical litigation, so I represented pharmaceutical companies that got sued. And about 6 months ago, I decided that I was toast, I was done, I'm ready to do something else. So I've taken the time since then to write a book, Power at the Table, and I'm having fun with my ranch and doing a lot of other things.
Just so help the general public that we're talking to today. So you have criminal lawyers, you have corporate lawyers, and then litigation, which mainly deals with civil suits. Is that correct?
That's the type of litigation that I did was civil suits. And those are cases that are related to money. The difference between a civil case and a criminal case, in a criminal case, you can go to jail. In a civil case, it is a question of paying money, so it's a liability issue. And I've never done any criminal work. The type of corporate work that you're talking about is more transactional work, so buying things or selling things, merging companies, things of that nature, and that's not what I did either. I actually went into courtrooms and talked to juries all over the country and explained to them why it was that we either hadn't done what the client was accused of doing, or if there was a legitimate injury, why someone else might be partially responsible, or why the position of the plaintiff in terms of the money damages they were seeking were not reasonable. So that's what I did.
So a lot of times this was for a judge or sometimes for a jury, correct?
Almost always in front of a jury. And very few cases that were what we call bench trials, which are cases just in front of judges. Virtually all of my cases were jury trials, and they were virtually all in state court in different states all over the country.
So in my book, I talk about positive communication. I also talk about body language and and all that. I assume when you're selecting juries, there's a lot of that goes on as well.
There's a lot of that goes on. I tell people it's like a blind date with 100 people.
Yeah.
And you, depending on where you are, if you're in Texas, you have a very limited amount of time to pick a jury. I was in Connecticut for 2 cases last year and the year before, and they have an unlimited amount of time to pick a jury, and it's individual, what we call voir dire, which is the discussion with the individual person.
So like an interview.
It's very much like an interview. It's like an interview to be
Wow.
on a jury. And some people do really well in those interviews and some people don't. But it's a very interesting process and it's very interactive. And like you said, you're looking at body language, you're looking at how people respond to questions. If you have people sense about you, you can kind of tell the people who like you and the people who don't
Right.
like you. So a question that I often would ask jurors at the end of all my other questions is there something about me personally, not about my client, but about me, that you just really don't think you could sit and listen to me for 2 weeks? Do I remind you of that kid in 6th grade that you didn't like? And you'd be amazed at the number of people who were willing to raise their hand and say, you know, I've listened to what you had to say, and I don't really have a problem with your client, and I don't really have a problem with the rest of this, but I know you said it wouldn't hurt your feelings, and I hope it doesn't, but I don't think I like you. Okay, thank you.
You're excused.
Yes, exactly, because that's helpful information, because the case should be about my client.
Right.
It shouldn't be about me. And teasing that information out of people in front of a bunch of other people is an interesting process. I love jury selections, my favorite part of the trial. Many people don't like it, and it can be very uncomfortable because you couple people's fear of speaking in public with their fear of hurting someone's feelings. Or of making the judge mad, because the judge typically will give a speech at the beginning and say, this is part of the process. You're obligated to tell the truth. You have to be objective. You have to do all of these things. So it takes a person who is comfortable with themselves to be able to actually answer questions in that setting.
Wow, that's, yeah, I can see where that to me would be an interesting part of a court trial, which you also got to have a case though, right?
You do.
Yeah.
You have to have something to talk about, particularly if you're going to be there 2 weeks. Or some of my cases lasted as much as 4 months.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you tease out at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
If you've got something that's just intrinsic that they're not going to be able to get past.
So I wanted to read off here. You're on committees for National Association of Women Lawyers, which also included a committee for evaluating Supreme Court nominees. You've been recognized as a super lawyer from 2005 to 2020. You've been on a list of less than 5 lawyers across the United States in Spotlight Table for Mass Tort Abatement Litigation by Esteemed International Ranking Organization Chambers and Partners. And in 2018, you were Lawyer of the Year, and there's many more to mention here. I got a couple questions. One, is there any particular recognition or award that stands out to you, that's special to you in any way?
Well, of the things that you read off, there are really 2. The 2018 Houston Products Liability Defense Lawyer of the Year was really exciting because that's a huge market and there are some amazingly talented lawyers who do what I do.
Right.
So that's one where you're chosen by your peers. So they vote on you. So that was really cool and very exciting. The Chambers listing is an international listing, and they do what a friend of mine refers to as a cross between an FBI background check and an IRS audit. So they talk to your friends, they talk to your clients, they talk to your opponents, and they look at your capabilities and what you've been able to do. And after having done that, for a couple of years, I was the only woman on the list, which was kind of exciting. And I was chosen along with 2 of my colleagues, one from New York the first year, one from Denver the second, first year and the second year. The third year, it was me, the guy from Denver, and a pair of younger lawyers. So considering how many lawyers there are in the United States, that was a big deal. That was very exciting and very gratifying.
Okay, my second part of that is this committee for nomination of Supreme Court. What all that involve, and do y'all just evaluate and recommend, or?
Well, the National Association of Women Lawyers is the oldest women lawyers group in the United States. Women could be lawyers long before they had the vote. And the National Association of Women Lawyers, which is headquartered in New York, is the oldest specialty bar association of that type. And one of the committees they have is a committee to evaluate Supreme Court nominees. And when there is an opening and the president makes a nomination, that committee looks at the particular nominee on a limited number of issues. It's specific to issues of interest to women. So child care, equal protection, equal pay, reproductive rights, and things of that nature. And the committee is made up of academicians, so teachers. Usually there's some law school professors, and I think the last couple of times there were a couple of women professors who are professors of women's studies at some of the big universities. Then there are practitioners like me.
Right.
And then there's a third group of appellate lawyers. That's something we didn't talk about earlier, but those are lawyers who specialize in doing arguments in front of appellate courts like the Supreme Court. So that committee looks at all of the issues related to the nominees. They read everything that the potential judge has written. The appellate people do that. I didn't do that. You interview clerks who worked for the person. You interview people who appeared in front of them as litigants. And you look at sort of the whole nominee to see how they fit that specific criteria. And then the committee issues a recommendation or a statement on whether you think that the particular nominee is qualified on women's issues or not qualified. It's a subcommittee of the ABA, and that's the American Bar Association, and the ABA does a more holistic evaluation of the judges. Ours is a particular slice on the nominee, but it's fascinating. It's been one of the most interesting things I've done in practice.
Wow. Yeah. So it kind of leads us up to your book. Sharla has a book coming out called Power at the Table. This is supposed to launch October the 5th. This book is written kind of for young lawyers, especially women lawyers, to get started in their business, how to get clients, and how to run their business. So I'll let her talk a little bit about that, if she would.
In looking back over the last 30-something years, one of the things that I didn't learn in law school, because they don't teach you in law school, is how to develop business. And I didn't know, and I assume many other people don't know, that law firm finances are set up sort of like a pyramid scheme. You've got a few partners at the top, you've got mid-level lawyers, you've got lower-level lawyers. Everyone has to provide money for the table, basically. So you're billing your time and you're doing your work. But as you move up the ladder, if you're going to get up to the top, you have to have your own clients. And it's very important that lawyers begin that process earlier in their career in developing their own business, their own clients. Because once you have your own clients, then you can have other people work on that work. And in most law firms, you then get financial credit for the work that those other people do on your clients. So it builds your own little pyramid. But if you're ever going to have power in your law firm and financial control, we spend a lot of time talking about work-life balance.
Right.
I think in society in general, but certainly in the legal profession. If you are going to have work-life balance, the only way to do that is to have control of your own schedule. And the only way to have control of your own schedule is have your own clients. So as a young lawyer, I didn't have any sort of guidebook or training on how to do that. And I think it's crucially important. So I decided to write the guidebook that I would have liked to have had as a young lawyer on how to start that process and what to do. The book is designed so that it's usable really by lawyers at any level. And frankly, the information is applicable not just to lawyers, but really to anyone who is in a business that's supported by clients. So sales, law firms, probably even construction business.
No, I'm sure,
Yeah.
without no doubt.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like building a business within a business.
it is.
Yeah.
That's
so,
a very good
and
way of putting it.
So October the 5th is the launch date, and it'll be available on all online outlets. And
It will. It will be available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I am still working on my website, but as soon as I get it up and running, powerathethetable.com will also have copies available. But it's been gratifying. There's a lot of interest in the book because for whatever reason, there's not a lot written in this space. So people are interested, and I'm looking forward to speaking about it and helping do training.
So also I want to mention this Speak Your Way to Success. This book has about 16, 17 different authors that have chapters in here, and Sharla has a chapter in here as well as I do. Her article is really interesting, so get an opportunity to pick up this book. It's also available, so bring that up. So you're a member of several organizations, and I can't remember all the names, so I'll let you talk a little bit about them and tell what you might have coming up or what activities are you involved in with that.
Okay. One of the most fun things that I've done in my career, I was president one year of Litigation Council of America, which is a society of trial lawyers. So there's an adverse selection process. Trial lawyers are a slightly different slice. You can walk into a room of trial lawyers and you know immediately that that's what they do because most of them are outgoing. So I was president of that one year, and I continue to be active in that organization. And I'm supposed to do a presentation for them in October. My best guess is that the seminar will get pushed to the spring, simply the reality of COVID. I am doing a presentation for the Women Lawyers of Los Angeles, known as WLALA, at the end of the month. I'm going to moderate a panel that's discussing women on corporate boards, which is a growing movement, particularly in California, but also across the country. And then I have a National Association of Women Lawyers program that's in the forming stages, but I will be doing either an online seminar, which is my best guess, for them October or so. And then I have a couple of law firms that have asked me to come in, talk about my book, and do some training with some of their young lawyers. So
Good.
I'm going to stay fairly busy, I think, with those items. There's always something to do.
There's always something to do.
Yeah.
Well, you're not only involved in those activities. I know the communities where you're from around Hugo and Fort Towson, you're involved in those communities as well. I would like to point out try to define a little bit about where Frogville is. Paris, Texas, which is about 25,000 people, from Fort Towson about 40 miles, but from Frogville is probably about 28 miles, 30 miles.
That's correct.
That's 25,000 people. That's the closest city of 25,000 to Frogville. If you want to find a town of 50,000, you have to drive to McAllister, Oklahoma, which is about 70 miles away. And then if you want to find a town of 100,000 or more, you got to drive 110 miles to McKinney, Texas, which is about 150,000 people. So it's really, really out. The county seat's got 5,000 or 6,000 people, Hugo, and so it's really country, and it's a beautiful place. That's Sharla and I know each other. I was born and raised there as well in the suburbs of Frogville. I was raised in Fort Towson. But anyway, just let you know, it really is out into the country and really a lovely place. But let's talk a little bit about what you do with Fort Towson, and I know you other communities around. So
I've been on the Fort Towson Homecoming Committee for approximately 25 years. The city does a small city festival each year at the second weekend in June for anyone who ever lived there, went to school there, basically drove through. But it is a wonderful community building organization and has really been a lot of fun. We were not able to have the homecoming this year because of the COVID restrictions, but we hope to be back and active next year. I have 2 buildings in Fort Towson, one that I'm renovating. It's a more than 100-year-old mercantile building. And in partnership with the city, we are redoing that, using it as community center, and ultimately hope to put it back into active commercial use. Fort Towson was founded, the fort itself was founded in the 1830s, and the historic fort location, which is outside the city limits now, has a wonderful little museum and a very active group, the Friends of the Fort, who do reenactments and things of that nature. The city was built in about 1906, and it was a big hub until the Great Depression. It had 3 banks, it had several hotels, yeah, you name it, it had a very active city life. And of course, it's been going downhill since then, but it's going through a bit of a renaissance. It has a wonderful little lake, Lake Raymond Geary, which is part of the city, which makes it very unusual. And it's a no-wake lake, so it's great for families and
Right.
small children and things of that nature. So we get a lot of people who are coming from Dallas and Tulsa and other places to have weekend locations. So we've been busy with that. I have turned an old abandoned church building there in the city into an event center, because there's really nowhere in the city that, other than at the school or one of the churches, that you can have any sort of event. So we have that available. And we're working with a group of very interesting, involved people on a variety of projects there in the city. So it's certainly not accurate to think that I'm the only one moving and shaking there. A really interesting group of people, some of them new transplants and some of them people who've been there for a very long time.
Right.
So it's been a lot of fun to be able to go back and do something interesting with my own
So
community.
along with homecoming, I might mention that the fort does reenactment and stuff during that period of time. They have events at the old fort during the homecoming as well. So there's quite a bit to happen in during that weekend of homecoming.
Yeah, a lot packed in.
Yeah, a lot packed in that weekend. So I also notice that I catch you posting employment needs and things of this nature when it comes to the local community and as well. And then you stay in touch with quite a few business people in the area, what's going on, and you promote new business when it comes in. So you do a lot of positive stuff for the communities that I'll say behind the scenes kind of, where you just try to help out where you can help out. So that's commendable, and I think everybody appreciates that very much.
Well,
So,
thank you. I try to do what I can. I view that as an underappreciated area of the state. We've never gotten a lot of focus from the folks in Oklahoma City,
no,
but
yeah.
it is a beautiful wildlife area. Some of the most talented artists I've ever seen are there. We've got great musicians. It's just a wonderful little area. So I try to do my part to see what I can do to help those who are there, make it a better place to live and a more profitable environment for them.
Yeah, I remember as a kid when we were playing basketball tournaments in Oklahoma City, we'd win a game or something. They said, where's Fort Towson? We say, oh, it's north of Frogville.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I know where Frogville is.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where Frogville is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was always fun, too. So as we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to add or comment on?
The process of writing the book was fascinating, and I appreciate the fact that you recommended me the group that I worked with to do that process. It's been an interesting journey to translate what I thought I knew into words on the page.
Paper.
And I am hoping that people find it useful and interesting. Like I said, it's sort of the guide that I wish I had had.
Yeah.
And I think that it will be useful for women lawyers at all levels. I think it is equally useful for male lawyers at all levels. But anyone who needs to figure out how to develop business and how to better control their financial role within the organization just has to find a way to develop their own business. And that's something that we like to think we don't have to do as lawyers. But the practical reality is that all businesses are businesses.
That's right.
And it's really what you can bring to the table that makes the difference in terms of your role within the organization and your financial outcome. Because there are some people who practice law because they just love the law. And the rest of us practice law because we have bills to pay.
That's right. Yeah. It's like everybody else.
Right.
So, my book, this book, I consider what I call a factual book. And I have a hard time organizing. Once I finish writing, then I try to come back and say, well, this chapter should go here and this chapter should go here. And did you find that to be a issue with writing your book? Or?
I did. I had to go back through a couple of times. I thought I knew exactly how I wanted it to work, and I had outlined it and organized it. And after I got the chapters written and I read through it, I decided this organization doesn't work. So I spent probably as much time reorganizing as I did writing. But I'm pleased with the way that it ultimately came out. But I was a college debater, and we were trained to organize. So I like to think that I can organize fairly well. But as I said earlier, it's a fascinating project to do the book. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was that process, that iterative process of going back through and figuring out this chapter works really well, but it really works better with this chapter than with this chapter, and doing that sort of reorganization. And I'm old school. I had to print everything out and then move it around, and then I could go back in the computer and reorganize it. But I don't have the same interactive ability with the computer that some younger people do. It's just not how I was trained, not how my brain works. So I needed to print it all out and then look at it and move things around. Once I did that and I could see it visually, then I could make those changes on the computer. But I wasn't able to do that as effectively as I thought I would be able to do when I started at the beginning.
So you think there'll be a second book?
There is going to be a second book. I have already started the outline process. This book is about how to develop your own business and get your own clients so you have a place at the table and you're doing better. Once you get there, particularly if you're a young partner, part of the next process is negotiating with your other partners about what ought to be your percentage take of those clients and that work that you've brought in. And a very good friend of mine in Chicago, a fabulous woman lawyer named Stephanie Scharf, who is both a PhD and a JD and writes on social issues related to women in the law, says that women are great at negotiating on behalf of their clients, but terrible at negotiating on behalf of themselves. So the next book is going to focus on how to negotiate for yourself once you have all of that work and all that business.
So have you thought about, after you do a few of these, moving to write fiction or?
I have a couple of things that I've been working on. They're still sort of in the formative phases, but I was a journalism person in college, and I did a weekly editorial because I was the editor of the school newspaper. And I still do the equivalent of a weekly editorial for my Facebook friends. Every Sunday I do a Sunday missive of about 1,000 words, and I would like to take some of those and turn them into a Sundays on the Porch with Sharla.
There you
so
go.
that will
That'd
probably be the next one.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Well, just remind everybody again, this book comes out October the 5th. Be available online and also on her website. Once you get her website set up, be sure to get you a copy of this book. Sharla, I appreciate you being here today, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Good. Everybody out there, do something positive today. Smile at somebody. Thank somebody. There's so many simple things you can do to be positive. Have a good day.